You can start, Dr. Claire. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to put my camera on. I'm Claire, and this is Lorona. Yeah, I think let's get started. Thank you for inviting us here this afternoon, just to have this conversation with you. I understand that we are being live streamed, so we're going to treat this more as a information sharing session rather than a kind of engagement, so that people who are watching can have the same kind of benefit as people who are in the room, just to be fair. But yeah, I think let's get started. Maybe Lorona, you wanted to share a message with us before we move forward.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Claire. As Dr. Claire has mentioned, my name is Lorona Madia, and I'm a case intake officer here at the office. Just before we start, though, we just want to talk about what is a trigger, because the information that we're going to be sharing with you today is it's very personal stuff, and it's quite it can induce trauma, or it can trigger you, if you've experienced something like that in the past. So we just want to disclaimer that, and that if it gets too much, please take care of yourself and just step outside quickly and then come back again. I just wanted to make that clear that you have the right to do that if it gets too traumatic or triggered for you.
Mm. Yeah, and also we've got two numbers on the screen there that if you are really struggling, please feel free to contact those numbers. They will be able to talk you through whatever it is that you are going through. And so, yeah, as we proceed, we'll basically be sharing information with you about not only what discrimination and harassment are, but specifically gender-based violence and how we respond to it here at Rhodes University. And so it's because of the nature of the content that it might be that, something comes up for you. But I think before we get any of that done, I think we may actually be able to do introductions, Lorona. There doesn't seem to be too many people in the room, which is nice. But maybe we can just start with ourselves. I'm Claire. I'm the Director for Equity and Institutional Culture. And part of our office's job is making sure that the institution has a good response to questions of discrimination, harassment, and particularly gender-based violence. Yeah, and so I'm here today with my colleague Lorona, who can tell you a bit more about himself.
Yes, as I said earlier, my name is Lorona Madia, and I actually am the interim manager at the Discrimination and Harassment Office. Basically, my job entails that we receive cases related to harassment, discrimination, sexual harassment, all forms of discrimination. And it is the first place that those cases come to, but we'll speak to that as we proceed.
Cool, thanks. So basically, Lorona is the person at this point until his partner joins him on the 20th of August. But there are not that many people in the room, so I thought it would be nice just to know who is in the room with us. So I'm going to invite you to do two things. If you could just share your screen with us, just tell us what your name is, and then also what you hope to gain out of the next couple of hours of our conversation. And this will help us kind of shape how we present the information too. So I don't know who wants to get us started, but please do let us know who you are. If you could turn your camera on, just say hi, your name, and what you would like to get out of this session. If there's any questions you have. Sue,
good afternoon.
Gladys, do you want to go?
Okay. I just first wanted to apologize. I'm joining with a desktop, so it doesn't have a camera function. I'm so sorry about that.
No
My name
worries.
is Gladys. And I think what I aim to gain is just an insightful understanding of how to refer students, because continuously as an intern psychologist and working with the Opidon office, it's been a challenge getting these cases for outside residing students. So yeah, just an insightful understanding of
Yeah,
referral pathways and how to support the students.
that's
Thank you.
perfect. Yeah, thanks.
Hi, everyone. I'm
Hi.
Joy Joseph, an alumni of Rhodes University, a very strong beneficial of the Center for Postgraduate Studies. Thank you for putting this together. I virtually look at violent practices perpetrated against women in heterosexual relationships, and I want to look at how we can manage people with trauma. There's a lot of trauma cases amongst women beyond research. How do we get these people back in shape, both physically, emotionally, and the best we can do? So that's what I hope to get out of this meeting. Thank you so much. Hello, Sue. Nice to have you.
Hey, Joy. Okay,
Thank
next
you.
then.
That was Joy.
Uh,
It was
Yeah,
Sue.
that was Joy. I'm Sue. I work at Rhodes University in the Centre for Postgraduate Studies. I'm just such a firm believer that higher education is already such a complicated time for young people. So I'm thinking here about our students in particular. And so they already have so much emotional complexity in their time here, forging relationships and friendships and things. It really yeah, it seems it's something that can make my blood boil to think that they can then be, violated in any way whatsoever while they're already navigating so much. So I'm just here to find out more, really an information session to find out more about what we as an institution are doing, what we can do. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Is that everyone?
Sibongo is there.
Sibongi Nkosi, Mpofu. Who's that?
Hi,
Sorry, now
everyone.
we're reading through the list now.
I was driving on her to park my car just to introduce myself. Um,
Sorry.
um, it's okay. I'm a postgraduate student, but I think my interest here has more to do with my work professionally. I find myself working with young people, and one of the things that we do is have discussions around gender-based violence, around discrimination and harassment. And I thought that maybe I might get some informed insight on how to facilitate such discussions, because I work with young people who have the potential to get into our education, and how I might be able to assist them in navigating the terrain around discrimination, harassment, and GBV. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Simon. Simon? Or Liam. There's someone called Simon and there's someone called Liam, and now there's someone called Amando.
Good afternoon,
Hi,
everyone.
who's this?
Simon here.
Hi, Simon.
Yes, I'm doing my postgraduate studies at Rhodes. So I just want to understand how I can discern between discrimination when someone's discriminate me, or there's some form of harassment, and also just to be well informed to help the next person.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Who else are we looking for? Someone called Liam or Armando? No? Okay, well, we won't put any pressure on them. They're probably going to get a cup of tea or something.
Good
All right.
afternoon. I'm so sorry. I've just joined the conversation,
Oh,
so I didn't get the question you were asking.
oh, hi. Is that
Hi.
Armando?
Yes.
Hi. So we're just asking you to introduce yourself just very briefly. Who are you and what you want, what you expect, or what you need to get out of the session?
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Armando Nyantumbu. Don't worry with the pronunciation. It's a Portuguese name. So, yeah. So I'm a PhD student at GMS, Journalism and Media Studies Department.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, I think this topic is a must. I mean, we all need to understand all the aspects involved in this, how to understand discrimination, harassment, and how to deal with that. So that's my motivation to join the conversation. And thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think let's get started. I think Leanne is making himself or herself a cup of tea, themselves a cup of tea. All right, we were going to do a word cloud, and I'm very glad we don't have to do it because I was a bit nervous because I wasn't sure. But I think given that there's so few of us, we were able to do that verbally. So I think we've taken note of everything you've said. And I think to some extent, I mean, that's what we're here to do, is answer. Yeah. So all of these questions are very much within what we've prepared for you. Just to give you a sense of how we want to just give shape to this is, I'm going to start with what the law says broadly. Not in detail, but just to, I think, make the point that what we do here are the policies that we create, the practices and processes we put in place don't just come out of nowhere. They're very, very much informed by our legal framework, as well as some of the kind of frameworks put in place for us by the Department of Higher Education. So I think that's the point we want to make there. And then we're going to look in a bit more detail at these words that we use. What do we mean when we're talking about gender-based violence? What is that with regard, I mean, how does that relate to discrimination, and what is harassment? And then we're going to zone in specifically on sexual harassment. And that's where Lerone is going to take over. And then on how we report these things here at Rhodes. And that's Lerone's baby. So I'm going to talk through the kind of more conceptual stuff at the beginning, and then Lerone is going to get into the kind of details of what these things look like in practice, and then how we work with them here at Rhodes. Okay. Please, at any point, if you have a question or you want some clarification, please just either put your hand up. While I'm speaking, Lerone is watching out for hands. Also, feel free to put a question in the comment box. And then when Lerone is speaking, I will be the hand watcher outer and comment watcher. So we are able to engage in those different ways. Yeah, so let's see. And please do use this space. And if we're not answering your question, please just remind us, hey, I want to know about this as we're going. So I think, oopsie daisy. There we go. We are working in a very heavily legislated area. The issues of discrimination, harassment, and gender-based violence specifically have kind of deep legislative foundations. The way in which you work with them have deep kind of legislative foundations. So obviously the deepest of those is our constitution, that everyone has the right to be treated fairly and be protected from unfair discrimination. And it lists a number of grounds along which we're not allowed to be discriminated against unfairly, including race, gender, sexual orientation, maternity or pregnancy, I think. Marital status. How many are there? There's like 50. No, there's a lot of them, right? So, I mean, that's the first document that we locate the work in. And then on top of that, you have different acts. So, for example, another very important act is the Promotion of Equality and the Prevention of Unfair Discrimination. And the role of that act is specifically to eliminate unfair discrimination in our institutions. And it allows, let me just get rid of this boxer, it allows a person who is being harassed on a prohibited ground to go to the equality court. So it opens up that mechanism to say that if this is happening to you, you have legal recourse, right? Then there's the Protection from Harassment Act, which provides protection against specifically forms of harassment. And this enables victims to obtain protection orders. So we have these kind of mechanisms which enable certain things, as well as the Domestic Violence Act provides for the provision of protection orders in cases of domestic violence. This is not it yet, though. This is just, here we're dealing quite specifically with discrimination, harassment, and specific forms of violence. Moving on, if my thing will work. There we go. We also have, and this is quite an important one for ACT, is the, under criminal law, the Sexual Offences and Related Matters Act. Sorry. My mouse is giving me trouble. There. And this was the act that, in its original form, kind of gave us the definition of rape. So this is where all sexual offences are defined. And a recent change in this legislation has again kind of expanded our understanding of what we understand to be sexual offences. And I'm going to speak to some of those in a minute. We also have our Employment Equity Act, which aims to achieve equity in the workplace through not only promoting equal opportunity or through employment equity, but also through eliminating unfair discrimination. So as employees, we have a right to not be discriminated against unfairly on all of the prohibited grounds listed in the Constitution. And this act makes it not only organizations that employ people are not only bound to make sure that when someone is discriminated against, that there is a consequence for that, but we have a positive duty to eliminate unfair discrimination, which means that organizations have to be proactive in eliminating unfair discrimination. Linked to that are a series of codes of good practice, but the most recent and important one is on linked to the Employment Equity Act, is the Code of Good Practice on the Prevention and Elimination of Harassment in the Workplace. And this specifically looks at harassment and sexual harassment in the workplace. And it compels employers to put in place measures to ensure, again, not only that these matters are dealt with in, when they occur, but also to make sure that they don't occur. Interestingly, this amendment actually thinks of sexual harassment or harassment as almost a health and safety issue. That if you are in a workplace that is characterized by harassment, that is in fact not only a kind of moral issues with regards to it's like a moral issue, but it is actually it impacts on one's wellness and one's safety within the workplace. So we're kind of expanding this, the definitions of these things as the law kind of progresses. And then, of course, within specifically with regards to gender-based violence, we have a national strategic plan on gender-based violence. We have a policy framework based on that strategic plan specifically for the higher education system. And these frameworks draw on all of these different legislations in order to think into and to address gender-based violence specifically in our higher education system. So these laws or these bits of legislation are all come to play in the work of our office. So when we are looking at working with particular cases that come through our office, all of these things come to bear in the way in which we work with discrimination, harassment, and gender-based violence at the institution. So yeah, just as a kind of in terms of the DHET's framework, the framework does compel universities specifically to not only address gender-based violence, but to think of addressing gender-based violence as about creating an enabling an environment for our students and our staff to do their work and to study in, that we have a goal with regards to prevention and awareness. Okay, so, and that we need to provide support and assistance for complainants and survivors. So this policy frameworks compels organizations or universities not just to, okay, we have a legal mechanism to work with, a gender-based violence case, but also that we have a responsibility to support our survivors and to provide them with the necessary psychosocial care and other support mechanisms that are necessary for them in order to navigate whatever it is that they need to navigate in. And that we have an educational responsibility to make sure that we are working towards preventing gender-based violence rather than just addressing it. Do you want to say anything in relation to that?
No, I was about to say
yeah. I just interestingly wanted to, I was referring to the Sexual Offences Act and the latest iteration of that, which was brought into law in 2022, is very relevant to our higher education sector. And this is why. Well, it does a number of things that stand out. First of all, it has broadened the definition of what a sexual offense is. It has included sexual intimidation as a sexual offense. But here is the thing that's particularly interesting. The new Sexual Offences Act deems all women students at PSET institutions, so post-secondary. What does PSET stand for? It's post-secondary education and training. So universities like ourselves and other post-secondary institutions. So all women who are under the age of 25 are at a university are considered vulnerable persons. What that means is that if you are a young woman at an institution, the institution has a much more active responsibility towards you with regards to your to making sure that you are safe with regards to being a victim of a sexual offense than it had before 2022. It's the same responsibility we have towards children and the same responsibility we have towards disabled persons. Now, it's a very controversial clause. Many people have argued that it infantilizes young women. The Department of Justice is unapologetic, saying that, well, you can say that, but actually young women at universities are particularly vulnerable to sexual offenses because of the way in which relationships of power operate in our institutions and the way in which they are vulnerable in relation to, for example, people, lecturers, people in positions of power, senior students, and so on. The other thing that is important for us is that it is now mandatory for anyone who knows, and this is anyone as in an individual or an institutional actor, whoever, who knows or suspects that a sexual offense has been committed against a vulnerable person to report this to SAPS. And if you do not report that, you are guilty of an offense. So theoretically, if someone comes to our office, I see there's a chat, I don't know what it is. If someone comes to our office and this person is a young woman under the age of 25 and tells us that they have been sexually assaulted or that they have been a victim of some kind of sexual offense, we are compelled to report this to SAPS. If not, we can go to prison. It doesn't quite work like that yet, but yes. And we can get into the details of that. The other thing is that the employer, as in the university, now has a further responsibility to check the National Sex Offenders Register to make sure that as part of our kind of employment checks before we employ someone, that someone is not on the sexual offences register, to make sure that we are not employing people who have been convicted of sexual offences. So there's a lot of, I think what's important to understand is that this area, this legislative framework is always moving and evolving, and so it's something that we as an institution have to move with and evolve with too. Is there a question for us?
It's just a
it's an AI thing. Okay. So basically, our job then as an institution is to take all of this evolving and moving legislation and turn it into sets of policies and protocols that can then govern our behavior. And so what we have currently is we have a policy on eradicating unfair discrimination and harassment, excluding sexual offences. We then have the sexual offences policy for students, and then the staff and student disciplinary codes kind of articulate with those documents. And we also have a protocol for managing close relationships between staff and students. They all draw on all of that legislation in terms of how they, and those frameworks in terms of how they lay out the kind of the rules and processes within the institution. This is currently under review because what we are hoping to do is to create one big unfair discrimination, harassment, and gender harm policy that then puts in place one clear reporting mechanism for all of those things, because actually it all comes to Lerona anyway. So it makes sense that these things are understood in relation to each other. So that is a policy under review at the moment. Also, as an aside, we're going to send you a nice big fat resource pack after this with all of the policies, links, and everything attached. So our office then, or not our office, the Discrimination and Harassment Office, is the place that provides support for all complainants, staff, and students, which I think has been misunderstood in the past, of gender-based violence and any form of discrimination and harassment. We are focusing today on specifically gender-based forms of discrimination and harassment. But remember, when we're talking about discrimination and harassment and any one of those prohibited grounds listed in the Constitution are matters that we deal with in this office. So whether it be with regards to race, whether it be with regards to culture, whether it be with regards to whatever the case may be, we will deal with all forms of discrimination as an office. We then also manage the whole. So we manage the reporting process. We provide support for the complainants. So, and Lerona will explain what that process looks like and the kind of support we offer. We also do some of the awareness raising and educational work, which as an institution we are obliged to do. This is one of those things, like today. And then we collaborate with university structures like People and Culture, like Student Services and Development, to improve our policies and procedures with regards to discrimination, harassment, and gender harm. So, for example, when we're looking at this new what I'm calling the new GBV policy, but it's actually a discrimination, harassment, and GBV policy, we'll be looking at how we can align our kind of grievance reporting, how we manage disciplinary processes in such a way that it aligns with best practice, as laid out in the frameworks offered to us for the DHET. So that's what we do. That's what we respond to. I think we just, okay. Are there any questions at this point before I start launching into what these things are? Okay, all right. So, I mean, I've been using these words somewhat interchangeably. So, discrimination, harassment, gender-based violence, yada, yada. But of course, they're not the same thing. And so we want to just start breaking down what it is that we mean by these things. So, I mean, fundamentally, discrimination, this is the kind of, discrimination is the umbrella term, right? Which is the kind of unfair or bad treatment on the basis of one of the prohibited grounds in the Constitution. And there's, like I said, there are many of them. I think there's about it's either 15 or 27. I'm not quite sure why those numbers are in my head. And they include everything from race to gender, to culture, to language, to pregnancy, nationality, religion. All of those grounds are grounds that we are not allowed to be treated unfairly or badly because of them. Now, of course, in our law, we make the distinction between unfair and fair discrimination. I think that's important to understand. So, for example, employment equity, we do, for example, discriminate when we are hiring people. So we will say that we would prefer candidates from, what are they called? Designated categories. And so we make that distinction, but employment equity is considered fair discrimination. And so when we are looking at discrimination in this context, we're talking about unfair discrimination. Hello? Hi. So, and specifically, because we're focusing in more on gender-related stuff, one can be unfairly discriminated against on the basis of your sex, which is your biological, your biology, your gender identity. Hi. Who's that? Sorry, I don't know who that is.
I can't see anyone's mic unmuted, but I'll try and keep an eye on that.
Okay. So one's gender, so how you identify your gender expression, which is how you express your gender, your sexual orientation, and other arbitrary grounds. There are also other grounds which are not necessarily listed in the Constitution, but for example, like body size and so on. So, so this idea of discrimination is the kind of umbrella idea. Now, gender-based violence is a form of discrimination on the basis of gender, right? Which can take very extreme forms, like in the cases of assault, sexual assault, or less extreme forms. And I say less extreme with, you know, like what's less like say cyber bullying. All right. And I say less extreme because none of these are none of them are unharmful. They're all harmful, But if one were to say, yeah, some are worse than others, potentially, but they're all extremely harmful. So it's a form of discrimination that takes a lot of different shapes, but on the basis of gender. Okay. And basically, it's unwelcome and unwanted conduct, which makes a person feel uncomfortable, offended, humiliated, embarrassed, intimidated, and that can create a hostile or threatening or demeaning environment for the person on the basis of their gender. And this includes, and I think this is very important, gender is not only about men and women, it's about everything in between. So people who are gender non-conforming are very often the victims of gender-based violence also because their gender does not conform to our kind of narrow social norms. So, for example, you can have transgender people often the victims of violence because of their gender, right? You have people in, for example, with regard to their sexual orientation, which has to do with gender, are also the victims of violence because of their gender and their sexual orientation. So when we talk about GBV, we're talking not just about the violence against women. That is a subsection of gender-based violence, but it's not all of it. So I think that's just important to remember. So I'm going to briefly go through what these things look like. I mean, what it is that we're talking about when we talk about gender-based violence. And so we're talking about rape, which is, we don't use the expression non-consensual sex because it's non-consensual, it's not sex, it's rape. So, and this it has to do with, a sexual act that is non-consensual, right? We have verbal harassment, which is unwanted and unwelcome and inappropriate verbal conduct, which, it involves usually sexual and offensive, so-called flirtatious language. Lorona is going to talk a bit more about what that, the differences between, what is the difference between flirting and actually verbally harassing somebody. Trafficking, again, a much more extreme version of this, of gender-based violence, which is when when we are the kind of facilitation of 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 sexual violence against other people, and treating other people as commodities specifically. And typically, this dynamic is very gendered. Sexual intimidation, and this is when someone threatens one's family with sexual violence, or people who are close to someone with sexual violence to get at them. Physical abuse, so this could be assault, it could be fondling, it could be petting, it could be pinching, but physical contact that is unwanted is also a form of gender-based violence. Non-verbal harassment, which are inappropriate displays of degrading material. So, for example, showing people pictures that are via text message, through email, or whatever the case is, on social media, that are inappropriate and that are unwanted. Also a form of harassment, and a gender-based form of harassment. Doesn't have to be verbal. Intimate partner violence is, of course, the violence that happens between intimate partners. And it doesn't have to be between romantic partners. It can be between family members. It can be between a caregiver and the person that they're looking after. And again, this often takes on a very much gendered dynamic. Sexual assault, which is attempted rape, or forcing a victim to perform sexual acts that are not necessarily rape. The abuse of power, or quid pro quo, also known as sex for marks, particularly in higher education, when a person in power seeks sexual favors from an individual in return for some form of benefit. Or denying a deserving person something because they do not want to submit themselves to sexual advances. This is a form of gender-based violence, and particularly one that we see in higher education across the country. Sexual exploitation, and this is when one or participating in sexual relationship that is exploitative, where someone is hello, where someone is participating in a sexual relationship because there is some kind of they're desperate and they need one is exploiting that desperation or that vulnerability. And then discriminatory abuse. So this can be any form of discrimination that doesn't necessarily have to be overtly violent, on the grounds of gender identity, or sexual orientation. So it's gendered or gendered discrimination, and that takes many, many different forms. And then, of course, the creation of a hostile work or learning environment. So when someone is in a work or learning environment that, because of the behavior of someone, becomes hostile, because of a gender dynamic, creating a hostile work or learning environment is a form of gender-based violence. Right? So I think the thing to learn or take away from this, and I hope this is coming through, is that gender-based violence is often thought of as rape or as sexual assault. But actually, violence perpetrated along the lines of gender takes lots and lots of different shapes and forms. Discrimination, harassment, cyber revenge, posting images online of a partner or someone because for whatever reason, of a sexualized nature, bullying people online with regards to their gender, grooming, which is actually the stuff that happens before any form of sexual or particularly sexual abuse actually happens. So this idea of GBV is not just rape and sexual assault. It's actually a whole range of behaviors that create these kind of hostile, demeaning,
Who's the good guy behind you?
unsafe environments.
Cute guy behind you! Cute, can I kiss you?
Just hold on a moment.
Do we have a troll?
Yeah, we do. Won't you please
I don't know what is the topic. I monkey.
Can you
Hey,
please
stop muting me.
please, can you?
Hey, stop muting.
Do you know how to do that?
Stop
Do you know?
muting.
Yeah. Do you know what to do, Asetu? There you go.
Yes, I have removed him from the session.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
I think
So interesting that the topic attracts a particular kind of person. We please apologize.
No, not at all. But I think that's exactly, it's quite telling, that you can't even have a conversation without this, without there being some kind of with some kind of violence, if you will, inserted into the conversation, because even talking about this is considered to be is something that needs to be disciplined. That's something that needs to be shut down. So it's interesting because nothing here we're talking about.
Mayday, mayday, I need the help of the something, and we're on the airline, and we're going to the airline straight to the airline and going.
Yeah, it's very interesting how this is having a very particular effect. Do you want to, if I can just ask Setu to make a few of us co-hosts, and then between us we can ask people. It's obviously, it is out on social media, on Rhodes University social media, and as you say, it's very interesting that that the very fact that people are talking about this is enough to make some people angry. So yeah, we can only apologize if there's a few of us now who are co-hosts, but unfortunately what people do is they'll be excluded and then just come in under another IP address or another name. But we apologize to everybody here. We will just continue.
There was also a question which I'm really grateful for, because
The question is basically, is there a way to make such sessions compulsory for departments and faculty?
Well, actually, there isn't a way of making these things compulsory, but there is a way of really encouraging people to take these things up. I think the first thing is to make sure that we have enough capacity as an institution to be able to do these kinds of interventions throughout the institution. So I think that is the first thing, and to make it known that these things are available, that we can come and talk about them. We can come and talk about any one of these things. I mean, we can come and just talk about quid pro quo as a phenomenon we see in higher education. And
Fala minha pizza, taxi, food na ideia, como pretty get so design, a vida me the best, bem geila, diga du eng, sing, komm, na lawaj, ba, wieder leicht, dagi, schucha, man, mi flow war auf, los, Pala, wo sind deine Jungs, wo, kommen, Mut, Polo 6, wo, die Reime und triple die Scheine, geh mal du lieber zur Seite, Digga, ich bang oder den Reiter.
Thank you. So yeah, but there's certainly a strong argument to be made that, our leadership can send out a very, very strong message to make sessions like this for there to be more motivation to hold sessions like this. Because I think, very often we just don't understand what these things are. And, particularly, for example, if one is working in a hostile environment as a staff member, or even as a postgrad, or whatever the case is, you're in an environment, you're experiencing something, it's because of your gender, and you think, this is just the way it is. It's not just the way it is. It's what you're experiencing is illegal under our law. And so it's actually whoever is creating that environment for you is breaking the law, and we have recourse.
As soon as people enter, we can get rid of them. But I just want to interrupt you and just say that, well, I mean, I'm just astounded. It does show you first the level of anger. It's simply us having a conversation, but it's also the kind of bullying tactics that people who are in this session maybe you hear, many of us are staff members here just to learn more information, but maybe you're already in because you're really feeling a bit vulnerable. I'm just going to carry on talking over this idiot. And then these bullying tactics are to remind you that you must stay in your lane, keep quiet, we have power over you. And that's simply not the case, that actually the law is in our side.
And I will say this, we are very good as an institution at dealing with, we're very strong when it comes to gender-based violence. And we really do take a kind of a zero tolerance approach to it. So, you know, if that is your experience, it is important for you to recognize that it's not okay. As much as I think, you know, we have some work to do in shifting what our laws, obviously what our law says, even what our policies say, and actually when it hits the ground, what our practices are versus what our institutional culture is saying. You might be in a department where you feel actually, I can't say anything about this at all. But if you kind of ventilate that in a different space, so in the space of like our office or one, you know, you'll realize actually it's very important that you do, because what you're experiencing is A, not normal, and B, not okay. So I think it is important that we understand what these things are and what they look like, and what we may be experiencing may very much be just quite frankly illegal, and that we have recourse in that regard. Yeah, I'm going to hand over to Lorona, so he can speak to you more about the specifics of how we deal with these things here at Rhodes.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Peter. I'm just going to play this video quickly.
It was here.
Okay. Okay, don't play.
Just make another tab.
Like so.
Control T. Sorry, we're having a technical moment. Yeah, if you just put Paleka in. I don't know what
It's okay. And I see Ipe has solved our problem by creating a waiting room. She will interrogate who gets to come in now.
Good. Remember the words. It was here. That's it. Okay. I just hope people can hear.
Anybody hear any sound?
No, unfortunately not. You'll have to just stop sharing, and then when you reshare, there's a thing that you must click on with audio or something.
Okay. Stop share, reshare.
Somewhere there, I remember there's maybe someone else knows better than me, but yeah, I think there's something about
sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect.
Every 3 hours, one of us doesn't make it. This country buries us before we are born, calls us by our obituaries before it calls us by our names, makes us women with nervous conditions with their guard up, law enforcement with a broken system with too much power in authority with guns that gun down their spouses, telephones with missing person details with no follow-up, garages with toddlers who should be in school, vehicles with evidence with no power to prosecute, post offices with weapons, shopping malls with kidnappers, bathrooms with carnage, a carnage with no expiry date, clubs with joggers, alleyways with not enough light. But even with all that light, you would still not be safe. Ubers with panic, Taxify with paranoia, walks with tasers, in groups, in public, in places you wouldn't think it could happen. Graves with girls taken too soon, too brutal, too horrifying to name, to document, to find, to mark as danger zones disguised as safe spaces with murderers who are husband material, schools with pedophiles with degrees in working with children, lecture halls with molesters, terminals with predators, construction sites with men old enough to understand no, churches with men who use your prayers for safety to get you on your knees with your arms raised. Every 3 hours, one of us doesn't make it. Our names.
Just playing along. Okay, it's fine. Just want to ask a question.
See the slideshow. Where's the slideshow?
Okay. While we are still trying to get back there, I just want to get your thoughts on listening to that, especially considering everything that has been said by Dr. Claire. Does anybody have any thoughts?
My only thought is that we need more spaces, perhaps not online, perhaps in person, to continue these conversations.
Yes, that's correct.
You know, and
Yes,
also
but-
just the idea of
Yes.
using poetry and other forms to have these conversations. I think it's powerful. And we're not, you know, we don't only need lectures, we need or policies. We need, yeah, I see best happen.
You can continue us.
Hi, everyone. I hope you well. You know, I was going to say the same thing to Sue, that this was a deliberate attack. We've had so many sessions at CPGS, which have never had attackers. It's based on the topic and based on the people that know the problem. So sometimes we share spaces where we talk about the issues that are happening to us, but those that are doing them are not there. They're not mandated to be there. So what's the learning and unlearning for a victim? So, for example, if I'm there and I've survived so many types of harassments, what's then the lesson for me when I'm here and the people who are actually not doing it are not here, especially those that hold powered dynamics in spaces that we work in, to start from the staff level, to start from the people who work in spaces where you're dependent on being liked by your boss in order to get a contract, and you end up even putting yourself, for example, at the center of being a victim because you're trying to get by, and that's not the space higher education is supposed to be. Now I'm thinking, what does it help for people to sign harassment forms that they're not going to harass? After that, there's no training that's mandated for them to understand what exactly is harassment. Can you hug me when I'm going through something without asking for consent? Can you even touch my hand without consent? Because we have past traumas which are triggers that other people do not know about. Can you come behind my desk as a person who's in the upper spaces me? What does that make my body feel? Because the body always remembers, even though the mind is not going to remember. If you are a survivor of any kind of violence, especially in the system of higher education, I'm looking at the numbers and I'm just thinking by myself, people are deliberately not wanting to know and learn that their behaviors are actually the behaviors we're talking about. So how do we make them be deliberate in that learning space? So how do we do that at Rhodes?
Yes, thank you so much for that. And actually, I was about to say that, you know, normally also when we go around the campus, you know, presenting on such topics, it is also quite amazing to see who normally comes to those talks as well, actually. So I was about to say exactly, actually, that there needs to be a way in which it can be made mandatory for people to at least attend such a talk. so that, before, you offend, at least you've been given a chance to know exactly, what you are actually doing, when you perform these things. Because, yes, but thank you so much for that. Are we good to?
Yeah.
All right.
It's
Yes.
okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes. But also what I found interesting about this poem is that, yes, what I find interesting about the poem is that it actually does not exclude any place. It kind of gives that idea that, GBV happens everywhere. It's not something that is isolated in one place or doesn't happen in another place, So that was quite interesting for me. But as Dr. Clay said earlier on, I'm just going to look at, firstly, go into harassment and kind of like show what it is all about and what it is. And I think just before I continue, it is important that as I continue, we also think about what Dr. Claire said in terms of, we operationalize the policy on harassment, discrimination, and gender harm. And also important is to say that these definitions also come from, the legal framework that Dr. Claire mentioned, and then we condense them to actually have our policies, so they're informed by that. But talking to harassment, it is unwanted conduct which impairs a person's dignity or creates a hostile or intimidating environment, or is intended or has the effect of including submission or creating fear of harm, whether directly or indirectly. With these hecklers, Yes, that is correct. Yes, we do. We do allow people to come in when they report. I'm just responding to a question that was put in the comment section. Yes, we do. Because we are, in a way, survivor-centered in the sense that, when a person comes to us, we also understand the fact that, you've been subjected to some sort of trauma. And what you don't want to do is that we don't want to induce secondary trauma by putting, unnecessary pressure on you. We want to give you as much support, empower you, so that you can make that decision to say, I want to pursue this case, or I just want to bring it for noting, or I want to remain anonymous. So the most important thing, though, I think, to your question is that, yes, we do. And that we always support the complainant, but also make sure that we give them enough support so that they can make the right informed decision. We give them all the information that there is, we give them all the processes that they're going to go through, and then the onus is on them to make that decision. All right. So the key elements of harassment, it is unwanted conduct. So that means the behavior that a person is doing is unwanted and it is unwelcome. It impairs dignity because, if you don't want something done on you, it can talk to yourself with, because, what happens to you, who then do you become if your no cannot mean anything? It creates a hostile environment, and harassment has a lot to do with power and power imbalances. So so in a work setting, if somebody's being harassed in a work setting, and some of us come from different environments, and some of us, when we go to work, it's normally the last thing, you waited so hard and so long to get a job, and when you eventually get it, and then somebody who's senior or somebody in the office makes that threat to you, it can really make your situation very difficult, in the sense that you don't know whether to stay, or because if you leave, then you still need to worry about your security, financially. Submission or fear: a person feels coerced and threatened, and then one of the key elements is on the arbitrary grounds that the motive of or effect of the harassment is discriminatory.
Some questions.
Okay.
Do you want to address them now? Comments? Or do you want to wait?
Let me see.
Okay. So there's a question, or there's a comment from Jamela. Jamela says, and to add to what Asipa just said, how do we sensitize others to what are triggers from past trauma? that they might not necessarily be aware of. And in doing so, how do we avoid further labeling, gaslighting, such as your work or you're too sensitive, which can act as a deterrent to speaking out? It's a complex web to navigate, and one's not sure that all these can be perfectly packaged, addressed in a one-size-fits-all policy or training manual. And then maybe the next one. Is that Jamila, is that just a comment, or do you want us to speak to that? I mean, I think it's a very powerful comment.
Yeah.
And then the next one from Sibongi Nkosi says, one of the arguments being made around women being sexually harassed is that they're invited by dressing provocatively. You can speak to that one.
Okay.
I've heard you do it many times. The way, I don't know what the TT is, the way women dress is itself harassment to men. How can we dispute or do away with this policing of women and victim blaming? There's one more message. Oh, just a comment. Thank you, Jamila.
Okay.
But made this point around provocative dressing.
It's interesting that the question comes actually because on Tuesday we were talking to something similar in terms of like flashing and everything like this. And one student said that what happens if women walk around and they are flashing and all of those things? I mean, if they're wearing short stuff, and is that a form of flashing? Yes, and these are the kind of questions that we normally have to deal with, you know. But also interesting is that 2 weeks ago we went to a higher health positive masculinity training, and this is where we actually were trained as men on gender-based violence and many other, you know, social issues that men normally perpetrate or that men normally are ignorant of. And these were the kinds of narratives that were challenging. And the main thing was that, you know, you can feel something and feelings are valid and they are normal. But then the problem is when you do something, you know, or you act on something. Because I think the message that they were trying to get to us was that, you know, we come from various backgrounds and are socialized differently. But it is important to know that, you know, when you enter in such spaces, we were there to learn and unlearn. And so in terms of how we perceive things is also a result of how we're socialized. That when a person is dressed in a certain way, you know, those are the type of things that we were being deterred against. Just to say that, you know, a person is a person, they've got agency. And if you want to approach them, you approach them in a way that they would like to be approached. And if they walk away from you, that's another way of them not wanting to talk to you. So those are kind of attitudes that we're being deterred away from. Yeah, thank you so much for that. And then we move on to sexual harassment. So according to the Code of Good Practice on the Prevention and Elimination of Harassment in the Workplace, sexual harassment refers to unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature that impairs the dignity of a person. So as you said earlier on, I think the most important thing about this is that we go back to the Constitution. What rights do you as an individual, when you enter the university, come with? Now, does it mean that when you come to university, you leave those rights behind? So we still need to conscientize people that you are still a responsible citizen as you enter the university. So we always ask for consent. So both verbal and non-verbal actions, such as inappropriate jokes and sexual advances, suggestive comments, gestures, or the display of sexually explicit material. And we also have seen the growth with the use of digital media, where people just, you know, to a WhatsApp group that belongs to a certain class or department, who just share jokes and, you know, or sexually explicit or content without asking for consent, whether they can share this or not. And that's another thing that people that, you know, that think they can get away with because it's something on social media or digital platforms. But I think the new police also makes provision for this, that, you know, that such things will be explained and yeah, we're gonna have a policy on that. And quid pro quo forms is that harassment is that which Dr. Kelly spoke about, where a person basically offers a benefit for exchange of a sexual favors. So where the employment benefits or opportunities are conditions on social favors and sexual favoritism, where the individual who submit to such advances receive preferential treatment. So that means this one is not based on merit or anything. It's just based on how the other person can make use of their power and exploit others, knowing that people come with different vulnerabilities, basically, and then taking advantage of that. So, as you said, all of these come from the Constitution, and as I said earlier on, it is unwanted conduct according to the RU definition, Rhodes University definition of a sexual nature. It violates the dignity of a person. As I said, if somebody imposes themselves on you, it won't make a person feel good about themselves. Forms of harassment includes unwelcome advances, sexual favors, verbal and physical conduct. A form of discrimination considered unfair discrimination, which is, I think, what Dr. Clay spoke about earlier on as well. A serious disciplinary matter addressed within the university's disciplinary framework. As Dr. Clay also said earlier on, that we, with the policy that we have, this office operationalizes these kinds of policies. And according to the Act, it is unwelcome sexual attention from a person that knows or ought to reasonably know that such attention was unwelcome or is unwelcome. So that's why I like the question that came earlier on in terms of how do we make this these kind of proactive interactions, preventions, so that people actually know that as a legal person over the age of 18, you ought to know when your behavior is unacceptable or makes other people feel uncomfortable. Or at least just know how to ask for permission in terms of how to, talk to a person or approach a person. So unwelcome sexual conduct can be physical, verbal, or non-verbal conduct. Conduct may be direct or indirect and may include technological devices, as I said earlier on, and images and weapons. A single incident of unwelcome sexual conduct can constitute sexual harassment. And at times, we as the office feel like we've received cases where people say, I thought that it had to happen to me maybe a couple of times. I didn't want to be the one that, with a single incident, now I'm the one that takes the office to such a place, and now the office has got a reputation. But what matters most in these cases is that, as you enter into this university space, you enter with your human rights. The Constitution protects you. And so a single incident of unwelcome sexual conduct can constitute sexual harassment. So there are different ways to show a person that a conduct is unwelcome. Different ways to indicate that sexual conduct is unwelcome: walking away or not responding to the respondent. And it is also very important to understand that as we interact with people, if it was welcome in the past, it does not mean that it will be welcome at every time. So we normally say to people, just ask for permission, So if a person greets you and says, hello, my name is Larona, and then the other one says, I'm Dr. Claire, and then Dr. Claire says, I'm a hugger, it's good to say that you are a hugger, but I think also, you say, would you like a hug, or, can I shake your hand? And then if they do hug you, it doesn't mean now the next time they see you again, they're just going to go and hug you. It might be very important for them to ask for the same permission again. Up until a point, Dr. Claire, you can tell me that, no, it's fine, Larona. When we meet each other in the morning, we can hug each other. It's fine. But if I ask you to stop, you stop. Those are kind of And most complainants have a difficulty letting the aggressor know that the conduct is unwelcome. And if a person has a difficulty in letting the aggressor that the conduct is unwelcome, that also shows you that there might be a power imbalance in that that is involved there. As I said earlier on, sometimes, you enter into working spaces, it's your first job ever, you're the first graduate, it might be very difficult to stand up and say something. That's why such offices are important to help people in these, when they navigate those disciplinary processes. Is there something you want to add?
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
Here I'm blurry, sorry. I think also just here, it's this issue of silence is not consent, particularly when we are dealing with a university where power imbalances are as extreme as they are. And why more and more we're seeing the law moving towards placing the onus on the aggressor rather than the victim, because we're seeing more and more responsibility being moved to the aggressor to make sure that consent is that there is consent. We saw that with regards to rape, so not sexual harassment, but rape. We saw that in the Toko case last year, where the judge ruled that the responsibility was with the I'm going to keep on falling over the terminology, but with the aggressor to be sure that the person was consenting. And it was a big moment kind of in the law. And so it is important that we do have more people in these sessions, because that argument is not going to fly anymore. They didn't say no, they didn't fight back. That is no longer a valid, no longer a response that is accepted with regards to these cases. So I just wanted to make,
Thank you.
I'm gone.